So I will call the meeting of the Transportation Commission for July 29th, 2026 to order. Ariana, if you please read the instructions.
Welcome to our virtual meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do the best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question, and if you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ariana. Aiden, if you could call the roll, please.
Yes, just one sec. So Alder Ochowicz. Sean O'Brien.
Present.
Derek Field.
Here.
Barbara Harrington McKinney. Ann Kovich.
Here.
Robbie Weber.
Here.
Denise Jeffs.
I'm here.
Pepe Barros.
Here.
Chris McCahill.
Here.
Bill Bremer.
Here.
Harold Cleams.
Here.
And Lynn Olson.
Present.
And I see Alder Okovich joined us as well.
Yep. Hello. Sorry, I'm a minute late.
No problem. Okay. So, Lynn, we have a couple, it looks like we have a couple. We just have, well, we have one absence and a vacancy with the first alternate. So, as long as Alder Harrington McKinney is not here, you would be able to make motions and vote. Okay?
Great.
All right. Everybody have a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting. Alder O'Brien.
Move approval.
There's a motion by Alder O'Brien. Harold?
Second.
And a second by Harold. Any discussion? Seeing no hands, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote, unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. Denise?
Yeah, I'll abstain since I was absent.
Okay, so we'll show Denise as abstaining. Anybody else? Okay, the motion is carried with Denise abstaining. Do we have anybody registered to speak under item 1, Aiden?
We do not, no.
Okay. We did have some written comments, which I'm sure everybody saw. How about any disclosures or recusals this evening? Okay, seeing no hands. We will move on to item number 2, which is Metro Transit Accessibility Update. And before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that we have a public hearing, which is item number 3, scheduled at 6 o'clock. So if we're still talking about item 2 at 6 o'clock, I'll ask for a motion to table item 2 until after the public hearing. And then after the public hearing, we'll pull it back off the table and continue that discussion, since we have the public hearing published to begin at 6 o'clock. So Jamie, go ahead. Welcome. And let me just say, we'll have a presentation by Jamie and staff, and then we will go to questions from staff, and then we'll go to discussion. So go ahead, Jamie.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all having me here tonight. This is my second presentation of the week. I presented earlier to finance committees. So with me in the room today, I have a few people. Apologies, they're not all on camera and you're just seeing me for now. But my name is Jamie Acton. I'm the general manager for Metro Transit. I come to you from Anchorage, Alaska, where I spent nearly 20 years with the municipality of Anchorage. The majority of my time there was spent with the municipality's public transportation department, where we ran the fixed route, paratransit service, and a pretty robust rideshare program. So I got my start in transit as a mobility manager. And so I quickly learned the value and the importance of a good paratransit system. So I'm here to talk to you today about and give an accessibility update, primarily information on our paratransit system. But I will start off, Connor, next slide, please, with an update on the fixed route. So I started in October of 2025, and one of the first things that I heard was that there was a lot of interest in providing some sort of mechanism that would allow riders on the BRT stations to alert operators, bus operators, that the bridge plate needed to be deployed or that additional assistance was required. And whether that is having a wheelchair secured or whether that's just needing some additional time to board or whatnot, that these beacons, per se, that we're calling them, would be extremely helpful and a very reasonable addition to our BRT stations. So right now, I'm happy to let you know that we are getting ready to begin the procurement of these beacons for the east-west BRT route. And then they are going to be part of the station design for north-south. So those will automatically be included in the building of the new, well, it's currently existing, but once north-south is fully equipped with the stations, those stations will also be outfitted with these same beacons. So we are looking to get that work started in early 27, and hopefully we'll be able to have those integrated here relatively quick and relatively seamlessly. So appreciate the interest there and the patience around that and getting this procurement going. And I will provide any updates if there's any delays or just good, bad, or indifferent on the status of this project, because I know it's very important. So next slide, please. On to what I'm really here for is the paratransit discussion. We are well aware that we have missed the mark on multiple occasions and in multiple areas. And so we have heard you. We are aware of the difficulties and the rider experience that is or was taking place. And we are making active changes right now so that that improves. And what that looks like is essentially we are looking at pulling together, we're finalizing the draft for the next request for proposal for the contract for paratransit. The existing contract expires June 30 of 2027. And so we are making big changes around that. But in the meantime, we have made internal shifts as to how we are going to better serve the riders, better support the service providers, and just overall making improvements to the program and how we provide paratransit service. So prior to, what was it, about 60 days ago. Sorry, I'm looking to my left, and there is our customer service manager and our acting planning manager and our IT manager, and I've got a whole bunch of people that are part of this. But about 60 days ago, I removed the paratransit program from Metro operations and we placed it into customer service. We did this for a variety of reasons, but first and foremost, to address what was going on with the writer experience and the frustration and the disappointment and just lack of satisfaction that we were hearing around the program. So made that shift, and we are getting ready to check in next week on how the first 60 days are going, where we see ourselves going next, and what are the intermediate tweaks that can be made as we are moving towards the new request for proposal and ultimately into a new contract with hopefully a service provider that we will set off in motion in July 1 of 2027. So one of the things that I would ask, next slide, please, is that you continue to report any issues. We have a number of feedback mechanisms in place. You can call. We have a form on our website. We have the mymetrobus@cityofmadison.com email, and just really encourage to continue to report any issues that may be happening around the paratransit service, around any of our service at that, but specifically tonight around paratransit. We really need that feedback in being able to address the issues. If we do not hear about them, if we're not able to document it, if we're not able to take it to our service providers and have productive conversations and do some active coaching around the issues that we're hearing, especially if they are contract violations, I can't do anything about it. And so the team here is open to the feedback. They're ready for the feedback. They know that you all have important feedback, and they do actively respond and track down the information and the issues and close the loop on what they're hearing. Sometimes it takes us a little while to get the information back and to fully vet and see what's happening. But this group they work very hard, and they're very dedicated to providing quality paratransit service, quality customer service in general. So I would ask, please continue to report any known issues. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk to you about a few activities that we've got going forward. Starting in Q3, I talked about similar activities that were more broad towards the 26 continuing budget, but really starting to look at Q3 of what improvements we can be making to try to improve the paratransit program. So we really want to start diving into the vendor contracts. As you know, we have 3 separate providers, 3 separate contracts. There's different provisions in each contract, but we need to start enforcing what is in our vendor contracts. And I think that has been a challenge, and you'll see something that we're going to move towards in a later slide. But the paratransit program moving into customer service really was the first step of getting more of that provider oversight and provider support, and will allow us to really begin to enforce those contracts. So looking forward to being able to have those conversations with the service providers, going ahead and digging into hiring processes, digging into their training plans, the service requirements, making sure that we are just really meeting all of the clauses in the agreements in those contracts. So then we're going to continue to make improvements on our new scheduling program. The scheduling program and the way that we implemented that, I recognize, has been incredibly difficult from a writer's perspective in a way that it probably shouldn't have. There is definitely a learning curve to this program. We had a legacy program for many, many years and made a switch to a new vendor and a completely new program. And to be honest, I think this group has worked incredibly hard, but there were still things that happened that I think, we have improvements that we can continue to make that will positively impact the way that we are scheduling and the way that that impacts the riders and ultimately also impacts our service providers. So hopefully, as we continue to learn and make improvements to that scheduling component, as we improve processes, I just learned of a process today that we're improving that's going to make several people's lives much easier and in-house for Metro, but then also for our providers. So hopefully those are going to start trickling out into the riders as well. So the next thing we're going to do is we need to improve our rider communication. We also are going to release a rider survey, and this is not necessarily like a statistically valid survey. It's not an origin and destination survey. It's literally taking the temperature of the rider experience. How do they want to be contacted? How do they want information shared? How can we best explain and educate and give information about the programs and any changes and communicate, but also just get a baseline of where the riders see the service at, and really as a quality service, and as the quantity of service and the demand continues to increase, how are we meeting people's needs and how are we not? So we're going to release that the second week of August. And that will also be in tandem with a very similar rider survey for the fixed route and BRT program. So that will be open, I believe it's August 15th, and I think 30 days? 30 days. About 30 days, we're going to leave that open. So for the paratransit riders, we will be posting that online, and we will also be doing mailers, and we will be collecting those surveys back and taking that information and moving into some of our midterm and longer term actions that I'll talk to you about here in a minute. The next thing we're going to do is release this draft RFP. There are some changes to the contract that we are hoping, and we will make some of those changes based on the feedback that we are hearing from everyone currently, but then also as we start to dig into the enforcement of the contracts, what the regulations are saying, what kind of the minimum requirements are, and really formalize that RFP and get that out so that we can start getting providers to bid on that RFP. So, and then the next short-term piece that is really going to continue to inform everything is really that rider feedback and our ability to review it and then to act on the feedback. So again, a plug to continue to communicate and reach out and let us know. Next slide, please. So midterm. So I'm considering midterm to be kind of October, November-ish, and really looking December-ish, and really looking into the survey results. How are we providing service? What's the temperature around that? And really dive into that. I also want us to share those results. So getting that out in public, and so people are able to see what the results and what are other riders saying, what are PCAs saying, what are advocates saying, you know, what are we hearing from people that are part of the paratransit program. And so we'll send that out, and then we are going to start looking at the FTA and the ADA requirements, and that is really what is going to determine those minimum standards for the program moving forward. At that same time, we need to start looking at Metro's policies, and we have some housekeeping around that in general. That's one of the things that the Finance Committee heard me say on Monday, was that we have some housekeeping around processes and policies and the way that we do the work here that really do need to be updated. One of the things that I thought was really interesting yesterday, my team and I sat in on a webinar, and Metro here in Madison now is sitting in a group of 120 of the largest transit providers in the nation. And so that is a significant, I think, bar, and it is something that comes with a need for a high level of standards and being able to really make sure that we are meeting the intent and the requirements around paratransit service. In my experience, one of the things that happens a lot, unfortunately, is that I feel like paratransit ends up being an afterthought. And one of the things that I have really been doing, not because, well, maybe because of the way that I would say that I was brought into the industry and the experience that I had early on, but really starting to have conversations where planning and paratransit are sitting in the same room. They're here today with me. So making sure that those conversations are happening early and often, making sure if we're talking about the fixed route, we're also talking about paratransit early, not as an afterthought, not as a reaction. What is it that we need to do to adjust? What is it that we need to do to improve? And making sure that we're not just looking at this as a required complementary service, but we really are meeting the intent and the needs of the riders, and that we really are providing a valuable service that is also critical to our community. High quality, based in the standards and the requirements, but also really meeting the needs. So we'll start to dig into those policies. With those policy changes needs to come a lot of rider communication. And so we will also, again, any of the policies that we're updating, we will be sending out mailers, we'll be posting that online, we'll be doing the rider education in multiple ways, and get that information out of anything that changes or updates, or just reminders too, like, hey, this is how we do this work. And so we will then be ranking and scoring the request for proposals, and really starting to dig into the work of finding the service providers that will be responsible providers or provider. It could be one, it could be three, who knows? And so it would be really great to have all of that work wrapped up in a contract in place in early 2027. So we'll round out the year hopefully with that. And then I'll talk to you a little bit more about some of our longer term efforts. So one of the things that I think that has happened at Metro, many of you are aware, over the last 5 years or so, we have had an immense amount of change. And we have managed a bunch of different projects all at the same time. And with that, our internal structure, our organizational chart took a lot of different variations and shapes and forms. One of the things that I think that got lost in the shuffle, and that I can see a need for sure, is to have a true mobility manager on board that is actually doing the contract management, that's doing the QA, QC, the quality control, and is really looking at the day-to-day management of the paratransit service provider. And also gives that conduit to not just the riders, not just the paratransit staff, but also the rest of the Metro team that will be part of these conversations and the planning efforts. One of the things that I did do immediately was pull up the Human Service Coordinated Transportation Plan and see Metro is called out in that plan a lot. And I asked, what is our participation in this plan? Where are we at with an update? And so we have a need to have somebody that is really focusing on the planning, the management, the quality control around paratransit. And so that is a position that I have the ability to create within some vacancy and within an already approved position in my org chart that just kind of never went away. So I'm really grateful for that. And so we will be pulling together the hiring process for a mobility manager in the longer term. I'm foreseeing that hopefully kicking off and getting somebody in that position probably right around the same time as we're trying to award a contract in January. But that will require HR stars to align in my favor, and we'll see if that happens. But we will move that as quickly as possible, because I think that is definitely where I'm seeing the most effort right now, and us needing to lean in really is around these mobility management activities. So then we're going to create some focused working groups. These working groups, the focus groups, what we really want to do is take the information that we're seeing out of the survey, take the feedback that we're getting that is documented and we're tracking from the regular calls or emails or whatnot that we're hearing, and really start working on some of these challenges that we're seeing, and how recommendations can come out of this, and either come to me or come directly to the service providers or whatnot, and really just look at this from the rider experience. But I also would anticipate doing some working groups with the provider. So that really kind of looks towards that active partnership that I think a mobility manager would help facilitate. That ultimately our goal is to improve the overall rider experience. One of the things that I forgot to mention about the RFP is that I am looking for representation on the ranking and scoring of the proposal committee. Denise, sorry to call you out. I know I had hit you up for that, but I would like representation on that RFP committee to help inform the decision that the department will be making about the new contract. So I recognize that there are some challenges with the existing contracts. I recognize that there is definitely room for improvement. I want to apologize and take accountability for the experience that our writers and our alders have heard about in the mayor's office and my office and my staff. And so I really do want to relay and ensure that this is a very important priority of mine on multiple levels, and something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. But I also just know the value of a really quality paratransit service, and the way that has really huge impacts on people's lives. So with that, I think I will. Anne, do I take questions? What's the next step? Oh, you're on mute. Anne, you're on mute.
Thank you. I was trying to avoid issues with my microphone.
Okay.
Happens just about every meeting, it seems. I forget to unmute. We will take comments from the public next, and then we'll go to questions of staff. And then after questions of staff, we'll go to discussion.
Great.
So do we have anybody registered to speak, Aiden?
We do. We have a couple.
Okay.
First, we have Patricia Zauler of Field Street. Neither supports nor opposes and wishes to speak.
Take your time getting unmuted, Patty. It does not look like you are unmuted right now, Patty. I can see Patty's iPhone, but it appears to still be muted. So I know it takes time sometimes to get unmuted. So
Patty, if you are unsure, try.
There we go.
Can you, I apologize, I'm having technical issues.
That happens to all of us. It actually just happened to me a couple minutes ago. So you're unmuted now. So go. We're anxious to hear from you. Go ahead.
Okay. Do you want me to put my video on or not? I'm sorry.
No video is necessary. Go ahead.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I'm very appreciative of the City of Madison offering mass transit with the fixed transit routes as well as paratransit. I've been a rider for several decades. There are things that are going real well. However, there's issues that need to be addressed in the paratransit world. I also submitted written comments. 3 minutes doesn't give me very long to talk. So if I don't get to cover it all here, I hope you read my comments. And I'm willing to help provide any input or help improve the system because I appreciate as a non-driver being able to get around and survive and thrive in the community. My first issue is extremely important because transportation is our #1 issue of getting around. The lack of concern of the safety and health of riders. And I have more detail in my written comments. However, on January 8th, I was injured. I received a concussion. The driver hardly communicated with me, and there's more detail in my written notes about it. I immediately filed a complaint with Madison Metro. I always try to file complaints because how is anything going to get resolved if you don't file a complaint? And my other request is that there's follow-up and I get some notification back of how the situation was resolved. And I've had several calls to Metro, and it's been almost 7 months, and I talked to the customer service supervisor a few times, and the paratransit supervisor called and left a message and told me she'd call after the MLK holiday. To date, I've not received any communication. I've not received any communication from the vendor. So I feel that this has not been addressed because other individuals that use paratransit have been negatively impacted. Drivers are coming and they're using the backup alarm to notify individuals that are blind that they're there. That's not working. Individuals are falling and getting hurt and drivers are leaving the scene. Individuals are getting dropped off at the wrong destination. There's several other things. So that these issues need to be addressed immediately. Individuals are not getting timely or missing their critical medical appointments. So we're talking the health and safety of individuals not getting to their doctor, dentist, and dialysis appointments. So for resolving this issue, you guys have touched on it. I mean, I put in my notes about review, update, and enforcement of the pertinent terms to the contract and holding the vendors accountable. And then I would also like to see a user advisory council or committee that would help you work on this. And I'm volunteering to be part of that. So that's my first issue. Second issue is the driver's limited communication skills and training. There's individuals that don't talk at all. They talk softly. They're hard to understand. And that needs to stop. The other thing is, previously, my understanding, there was sensitivity training provided that the drivers needed to know how to interact and help individuals of various disabilities. And some of this stuff isn't happening. So some of this stuff they need to be, they're in the customer service field. They need to know how to communicate well and be able to be trained on how to interact and work with individuals that are the riders. My third item is ADA discrimination of my service dog. I had 2 recent experiences this year where the driver didn't want to take me, or I don't know, I got no-showed, and then they came back again and said, well, this is the first time I ever took a service dog. And it's like, you can't deny me of my service dog. And then I've had other issues in the past with that. My third issue is the premature implementation of the new scheduling system that has caused lots of issues there where people are not getting to their appointments in a timely manner or missing critical doctor appointments. so that needs to be vastly improved, because I had a recent ride where I made a ride at 9:45 and I waited my 20-minute required window before I called Metro, and I was told my ride is until 10:10, and I reiterated I scheduled my ride to be picked up at 9:45, and I was told it's a bug with the new system. And it's like, I get that, but I'm a former computer programmer and a project manager, and it's like, I didn't implement stuff if it would cause more harm than what the old system did. So some of the stuff needs to resolve timely. I'm assuming that's my 3 minutes.
It is. Thank you so much for your comments. And I did read your email that you sent in, and I'm sure everybody else on the commission did as well. And I know folks from Metro Transit received that as well. So all of that detail is contained for us there. So we thank you for that. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Okay, I'm seeing no hands. Thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your feedback and your input. Aiden, who else do we have?
Next, we have Gary LaFleur of Century Place, neither supports nor opposes, and wishes to speak.
Go ahead, Gary.
Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Oh, hello. My name is Gary LaFleur. I lived in Middleton and Madison area for quite a while. I am a good friend of Patty Zeller's, and some of the things that she talked about happened to me. But what I'd like to do is express that I am so grateful that Madison has this Metro Transit availability for me to get around. My wife is always not always able to cart me around to say to everything that I need to go to or want to go to. So I find this very much an independence thing, and that means a lot to me. So with that, I give Metro Transit a lot of grace when I'm telling you there's got to be some changes, because on the issues that Patty was saying, that there's safety involved. As a blind person, I was told to get on the wheelchair lift to get into the van. Somebody was sitting in the van, didn't work, so on the lift. So there's no place for me to hang on to. It's made for a wheelchair that gets strapped down before it gets moved. So why am I supposed to hang on to it? Not being able to see what's going on or what's happening. Now, had I not needed that van ride at that particular moment, I would have just said no thanks and gone my way, but it was an important ride. I needed to get to my place. So I was lifted up, and I literally had to crouch down to half my size to get in the van. So that, again, is another fall risk that I can't take anymore. So things like that need to change. The driver did not have the ability to really communicate what was really going on. So again, it goes to the part that Patty was talking about, is that these drivers need to be able to communicate. Two, I'm supposed to be having door-to-door pickups, and I'm getting like the backup beeper to call me to come to visit. I was at a restaurant. I was at the front door sitting on a bench outside, and I kept hearing this backup beeper going, okay, the garbage pickup or some sort of truck is backing up. I'm going to stay away, because beeping sounds means something's happening, stay away. It doesn't mean, oh, come here. So along with that, I found that out because the van driver eventually came out, picked me up. We went to another pickup, and he did the same thing. So it's not something like, oh, he was just backing up and trying to get into a stall. No, he was trying to call me to come to the van so that he didn't have to get out of the van. And that same driver did not get out of the van to get me up the driveway to my front door. And I'm like, well, why am I supposed to have door-to-door service if it's not going to happen? So I've had other times where scheduling, like Patty said, is like sometimes non-existent. I mean, if I have to make an appointment for a ride a half hour before I need to get somewhere, I'm waiting 10 minutes before because at 5:02 they can show up, but I'm waiting there from 15:02 to 10:02 just because I don't want to miss my ride. Then I can't call till 20 minutes after my ride. So there's this disconnect that is kind of hard for us to work through. If now Patty was saying that they're now all of a sudden changing up the pickup times. How am I supposed to figure that out and navigate that? I'm sorry.
That was a fast 3 minutes.
That was a fast 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But
Three minutes
thank you for your
goes pretty
time.
fast.
I hope this information just gets put in as we're grateful, but we need some changes.
Well, we appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Okay, thanks so much for coming. Aiden,
you.
do we have anybody? Yes, thank you. Do we have any other registrants, Aiden?
Not for item 2, no.
Okay. All right. So thanks so much for coming and sharing your thoughts. So now we'll go to questions of staff. Who has questions? Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. First, Jamie and team, I want to express my sincere gratitude for the presentation tonight, but more importantly for the conversations that we've been having over the last few months and the receptivity from you and Mick is very heartfelt. I know you care and that you're doing the work to try to get paratransit back on track. I also want to thank Patty and Gary and also the folks who did written public comment because there's a lot of vulnerability, when we're talking about our safety and how we're treated often without dignity. It's an act of courage to write what our writers wrote and what Patty and Gary said. So I want to appreciate that. I've got lots to say on this topic, surprise, but I want to just do questions first. So Jamie, I really appreciate your plea to have folks give feedback. And I know I did a lot of reach out to try to get folks to participate tonight. I'm going to be really honest. People are scared to do so. I have heard from some of our constituency that there is fear of retaliation. One of our constituents gave direct example of reporting the concerns she had about paratransit, and she was very concrete and specific. And the next time that particular driver came to pick her up, the driver was very angry with her and expressed anger. And so I think one of my questions is, how do we encourage people to give the feedback that is so critical and assure their physical and emotional safety and not being targeted for retaliation?
Thank you, Denise. I would echo that sentiment that it is, extremely vulnerable to share these concerns. And I understand that fear of retaliation and just what does that mean for something that is so critical to your mobility and how do we provide that service? Mike, is that something that you're able to speak to about how you handle? I've got Mike Dentiste, my customer service manager here with me. Sorry to move the camera around in real time, but I think it's important for Mike to have a chance to talk about the feedback loop and what he's been doing just in the last 60 days. I will reiterate that, but I think that there is definitely...
Without going into that specific instance or going into a specific instance, I think the shift, as Jamie started to say, is our move to customer service. And the part of that was the replies to feedback and how feedback was handled by our providers and how we actually respond to feedback. Getting them on board with the customer experience, the customer service part of it was incredibly valuable. That's the shift that we wanted to make. So part of that is taking it out of operations and putting in customer service focused so that we can get them focused back on customer service. So once again, without dealing with that specific issue, which I'd love to hear, not love to hear, but I'd like to hear more about just so that I can follow up a little bit more and understand. I've only been involved in the process the last 60 days, but I can assure you that my involvement with the process is pushing everything towards getting that customer service focus, responding, working with our providers so that they understand when we do get feedback, the importance of how they address that feedback, not in the fact that they just tell their driver and their driver just hears about it. It's about making corrective actions, about training them properly, about taking proper steps on the road and with our clients more than anything.
I think, sorry, I'm a little out of screen.
Off of blurry. Yeah, there we go. This is Amy.
Yeah, sorry, it's a little blurred because of the background. I just want to add to what Mike said. The other piece of this is that we have started in that last 60 days, we have started more regular communication with the providers as well, and helping train them on how to deal with some of this feedback. How to work with their staff on the feedback so that this sort of retaliation and issues shouldn't happen and they know how to deal with it. As far as encouraging people to continue to report it, we can also take that into account. So if they have this type of situation and they let us know about that fear of retaliation or something like this that has happened to them, we can work on our side to make sure that the communication with the providers is kind of that one step removed from the individual. We can try to anonymize it as much as possible while still dealing with the actual situation. Sometimes that might be a little hard, and we'll do our best to work with the clients and with the providers to make sure that we're addressing those concerns. I hear what you guys are saying about that fear, and we want to make sure that we're in communication with our riders, with our clients, to make sure that we're doing what we can to mitigate that.
Good, Amy,
Denise.
thank you. I'll follow
Sorry.
up. Jamie, I hear you. I'll follow up with you too around that particular incident. I needed to look at the time. Was it prior to the 60 days or after? So we'll do an offline, but Jamie, go. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Denise and everyone, I'm moving the laptop around and we will get our camera situation sorted here at Metro as well. But I think one of the things that I really do want to try to figure out is how do we take concerns to the vendors, the providers, and really say, it doesn't matter if this is coming from Denise or Jamie or Mick, it doesn't matter who it's coming from. It actually shouldn't even probably ever reach that provider. It is the substance of the complaint or the substance of the issue, and that person, that the writer should be able to feel confident in reporting it and knowing that their personal experience isn't going to be shared in a way that puts them then in a situation where they need to feel like retaliation would even be possible. So I think we probably need to also like look at the ways that, and like I said, we did make a change. And so this could be a shift in Mike's approach versus where we were with operations. But I do think that making sure that we are not sharing enough detail, like we're sharing the substance of the complaint, but not the individual details that would make it available to a driver or whatnot to be able to put it together as to who exactly made that complaint, unless that was absolutely necessary. Does that make sense?
That speaks to it. It makes beautiful sense. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Sorry about that. Sorry about the movement, everyone.
Okay. No
That's it
problem.
for me for now, Anne. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Denise. Harold, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also want to thank everybody who spoke today and who sent in emails. I don't use paratransit, so the only way for me as a commissioner to learn about this is to hear from Metro staff and to hear from those people who have been affected by things that to me really sound just unacceptable. And yeah, so we need to work on fixing that. And I appreciate the presentation on concrete action steps. I guess 2 questions related to that. So first, with the rollout of the scheduling software, have you done or are you going to do some sort of like root cause analysis of like how did this go wrong?
Short answer is yes. I believe we're actually going to we have several root cause analysis situations, I think, at Metro that we need to be able to look at, and paratransit is one of them. And so we'll be diving in because I think things like this are great teachers, right? At the end of the day, really understanding how we got here, understanding how we move out of it, and understanding how we move forward, and who knows how long, since this was a legacy program, when we move on to a different platform, that we don't end up in this situation again. But yes, I foresee Metro starting to kind of really diving into multiple just reviews and analysis of the way that we operate in general. So I think that is always a really great teacher, and looking back and what went well and what was a struggle and what was what will we absolutely never do again. Those are important teachers for sure. We're actually doing that just with one of our annual reports with a huge data dump that we do annually. And we had a lot of new players in place. And so that's just another example of the way that we're going to use that as a tool to learn.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think I would encourage you to, like, in the sense of transparency, like, share back what you learned from those root cause analysis, both with the public and with the commission. So I think that would be really good.
Yeah, I do not foresee this being my last presentation.
Very good, very good. And the other question slash comment, I mean, I think the action steps you outlined in your presentation, those all make sense. What I wonder is, are there specific goals and target metrics included with those, or will they be in the future? And I'm thinking both, I mean, I think the RFP seems like an obvious place, so to hold the service providers accountable to Metro. And then I think also for you as an agency to hold you accountable toward the Common Council and the Transportation Commission of like, and I'm not sure what the right metrics would be, number of customer complaints, by severity. I'm sure you are probably better positioned, and I mean, your work that you suggested doing with stakeholder groups, I think that could be another thing, like, hey, what should we measure and what needs to be a target? I mean, some of the things that we heard about today, I think the target should be they must never ever happen again, like somebody getting injured, being treated disrespectful. But yeah, I think having specific metrics that we then can see, like, yeah, we're making progress, or maybe we're not, and the accountability piece with the RFP to the providers, I think that would be really key.
And can I just respond real quick about metrics?
Sure.
Okay, so yes, and that is some of what the survey effort will allow us to start doing, is kind of tapping into some of those responses as metrics. But also in the RFP, there will be very clear service provider guidelines and metrics that they will be required to adhere to and meet as part of the ADA requirements and also FTA requirements for paratransit. And then also your suggestion around, some of what we hear from the focus groups and additional metrics. When I was in Anchorage as the director there, I was responsible as part of the budgeting process to provide quarterly updates and metrics around the fixed route service, around the paratransit service. And so there's some really great industry standards, but I think it would be interesting also to see if there was additional ones that the focus groups came up with that would be helpful in measuring performance. But we already actually collect and report a lot of data. And so I would like to see how we could use that effort without creating some duplication. But I think data and metrics and having goals and things that kind of say this is how we do the basics, and this is how we go above and beyond and we exceed, and this is how we rate ourselves in a way and how we're doing. So I would love to see that materialize and become more robust for sure.
Thank you very much. That's all I had.
Thanks, Harold. Alder Okovich, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll like you. Thank you for the presentation, and also thank you for everyone who's spoken up. Like Harold said, a lot of us don't use paratransit, and we don't know about these issues if we don't hear about them from people. So I appreciate everyone talking. I just have a quick question on the survey. So you mentioned posting it online and doing mailers. Are you also planning on emailing users of paratransit or sending them text messages? Okay.
Yes, sorry. I sometimes when I say online, I think I just lump all of the texts together. But yes, I foresee us posting it online. I believe we have emails available for most writers.
Part of this survey is also to figure out the best mode of communication with a lot of people. Kind of narrowing that down so that we know how we can reach them best. I think it's been kind of scattered up to this point. So kind of combining our efforts and figuring out the best way to post updates to get this information out is kind of baked into the survey itself.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry to move you around. I need a lazy Susan situation.
That's okay.
But yeah, I foresee this online, email. We have the text for the fixed route. Do we have text messaging also going out for the groups? Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like we have several different avenues to be able to spread the information around the paratransit survey.
That's perfect. I figured you had looked into it. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just posted on a website and assume that's good. But glad to hear pursuing multiple avenues.
Thank you, Alder.
Thanks, Alder. And Lynn, ironically, you have 3 minutes until 6 o'clock. So if you have more questions, we'll table this until after the public hearing, and we can come back to you after that, okay?
No, I just have good things to say. And okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being here and presenting to us your plan for satisfying some of our very hearty complaints. And I'm very glad to hear that you're working directly with Denise Jess. It is good to see just about everything that we have asked to be addressed is being addressed. I'd really like to encourage a better communication plan between Disability Rights Commission and the city. And that would be my last wish. Thank you.
Lynn, if I could ask you to, I don't want to burden you, but if you have ideas about what that better communication plan might be with the Disability Rights Commission, get in touch with Jamie and let her know what thoughts you have about what might work out well. And I thought that actually something that we may want to do at some point in the future is have an agenda item on paratransit at the Transportation Commission and invite the Disability Rights Commission to come and join us at the table for basically a joint meeting about this particular topic, because it's something for us to think about and something for you to think about, Lynn, in terms of how that might work, or if it's better if it just goes to DRC as well. So, and Denise, if you think about that too. So, Jamie, we have a lot of different ways that we can communicate.
Definitely.
And
yeah, I was just going to ask, Lynn, who would be the appropriate? Should I reach out to you? Who would be best for the commission?
I think Rebecca has historically been our contact, in a professional, because we're all volunteers. And so I'm not asking for anything, hardcore. I just want to make sure that communication is intentional.
Yes.
And Rebecca Hoyt is on the call, Jamie. So she's listening in tonight. So you guys can touch base as well.
Perfect. I will.
Denise, is it something that can hold until after it's 6 o'clock now?
Actually, yep. I was just gonna ask that we table this so we can move to the hearing.
Thank you. I'll take that as a motion.
Yes, fine.
Okay, so Denise moved that we table item 2 until after the public hearing. Harold?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to assume unanimous consent vote, unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. Okay, so we will come back to item 2 and take it off the table after the public hearing. So it's now 6 o'clock. I'm going to describe the process for the public hearing. First, we'll hear a presentation from Metro Transit staff. Then we will open the public hearing and hear from those who are registered to speak. And then after closing the public hearing, we'll move to questions of staff. And then we will go to motions and discussion, because we do have an action item or an action requested of the Transportation Commission this evening. So first we will go to a presentation from staff. So Mick and Connor.
Yeah. Hi, Ann. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry. We were just looking for Mick there. Hi, Ann. I'm Connor. I'm the interim planning manager, and I'll just quickly kind of go through our service standards and design guidelines. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. So I'll just quickly go through this document. So this is part of implementing an internal process for looking at our service change process, which happens up to 4 times a year, and really just providing some transparency and more of a formal process on how we make service changes, how those service changes get adopted within Metro and brought to the Transportation Commission. And so that includes a classification of different types of service changes and the various thresholds for review that those go through. And then this does also tie in with another document that we'll be bringing to the TC later this summer, which is our Title VI policy with major service changes, which have a threshold for review by the FTA standards. So this part is really just our internal process and providing a formalized process and transparency around that process. This document also contains our service standards, which are required, again, by the FTA for Title VI. And so these include things like our service span, vehicle load, on-time performance, and then the frequency of our routes, as well as the distribution of bus stop amenities. So these are used in our Title VI plan to evaluate service. Additionally, we added a couple internal metrics, such as route productivity that we use internally to measure our service. Finally, we added some service design guidelines that really just kind of are intended to guide how we plan our service. So these include things like striving to ensure that routes are as direct as possible, serve multiple destinations and purposes, are simple and consistent in their design, and that schedules are coordinated and have consistent bus stop spacing, so that our service is something that is simple and easy to use for our passengers. So with that, I will turn it back to the commission for any questions or comments from the public. Thank you.
Thanks, Connor. After that presentation, we will now open the public hearing. So the public hearing is open. So we will now hear from people registered to speak. And registrants have 3 minutes unless they contacted Aiden in order to request interpretation, translation, or disability-related accommodation. And in that case, they would have 6 minutes to speak. So, Aiden, who do we have registered to speak?
So first we have Benjamin Woolma of North Lakewood Gardens Lane. Neither supports nor opposes and wishes to speak.
Hello. Hey,
hello.
Thanks to Metro for being here, and I especially appreciated hearing updates on paratransit. Mostly, I just wanted to speak tonight to share that I feel like I don't understand what Metro's mission statement is, which is a little odd to me, given that I'm a familiar name at these meetings and I use Metro Transit, and I've read various city planning documents spanning several years now. And I'm also somebody who's benefited by the major route redesign. What I would really like Metro's mission to be is to reduce traffic by creating viable alternatives to driving. As an anecdote, I have a coworker that has to take the C2, I believe it is, the one that goes furthest east, past along Buckeye Road, I think. I don't remember exactly because I don't use that route. But he works at University Hospital, and if we get tied up on our shift for like an extra 10 minutes, he has to wait almost an hour to get home because, according to him, frequency of that route is once an hour. I live on the D2, and service, especially outside peak hours, is really poor on that route. So I just really like to see a little bit more vision from Metro if possible. It seems like everything, when I skimmed through this PDF and what you just presented, is based on current customer base and using that to gauge demand, as opposed to creating new riders. So I appreciate things getting more defined and all that, and I appreciate work you're doing. I just really hope that as a city we can really expand the vision for Metro, even in the absence of funds. Because as we've seen through the years, when funds do become available, sometimes there's a short window. And I think it'd be really encouraging for the morale of the city if people knew that Metro was looking at how to reconnect all the people that were hurt and significantly hurt by the route redesign, for example, and get to a world where 15 minutes is the baseline for the whole system, and our BRT can really start running like a rapid transit service. Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming and sharing your thoughts. Does anybody have a question for the registrant? Okay, thanks. Thanks very much for coming. Who do we have next, Aiden?
Next, we have Carol Neiman of Lofts Gordon Avenue, neither supports nor opposes, and wishes to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go.
Hello. Hi. Okay, thank you. So I like to ride the bus to and from work, and I do this on the B from Packers and Aberg to Park at Regent, morning and late afternoon. And I've been doing this regularly since February. The bus is very inconsistent, but I've been able to use the tracker for the most part to know when the bus is coming, which unfortunately sometimes even the tracker doesn't work. Today, for some reason, the tracker was frozen. I did have to refresh my browser, but that's so generally I can rely on the tracker. Unfortunately, I cannot rely on like the actual schedule. It seems like the drivers don't even know that there is a schedule, honestly, most of the time. You'll have drivers speeding to get to, I don't know why they're speeding, because really if they just go the speed limit, we'll all stay on track. I clocked my bus going 41 yesterday on, East Wash. So it doesn't make sense to me how they're going to stay on track. I've seen people miss the bus because the bus goes too fast. I would like to see our bus system thrive. I'm eager to hear more about what you guys are doing. I'm glad I found this meeting. I don't think you all, honestly, and not to be rude, but I don't think the planners of Metro have been understanding the people that use this bus, or the buses rather, and what it's like to have this lifestyle where you use the bus. So I'm grateful that you're listening, but I'm curious to know, where are you getting this information from, that you're making these changes based on what and who? Like, where are you getting comments? That's my question. I just want to say, like, just to get to Woodman's, it takes like a half an hour. And I really like, and I don't live that far. I live near Packers and Aberg. And I really like what the previous speaker said about 15 minutes as baseline. Those speed buses should be coming every 10 minutes. We shouldn't, if you want to have if you want customers, you need to be reliable. I need to know that if I miss my bus, I'm not going to be waiting 15 to 20 minutes to get a ride, plus the 40 minutes it takes me to get across town. I need to know it's like every 10 minutes, especially on those, what you call the speed, I don't know what they're called, but they're the fast routes, like A. I love the bus lanes. I think you guys have done a great job. I'm impressed that drivers aren't using, I'm impressed with it. But I do want to know where you're getting, your information that you're making changes based on, because it's really hard to be a bus rider in this town. Thank you.
Thanks for coming and sharing your thoughts. Does anybody have a question for the registrant?
Well, I'd like to know where you're getting your comments that you're making changes based on. That's a question.
If you have direct questions, this is not, how this works is we're here to hear from you, and then staff and the Transportation Commission will take your comments and ask their questions, et cetera. So this is not a give and take opportunity. It's just, we'll hear from you, and you're welcome to connect directly with Metro Transit staff if you'd like to have a conversation about it. Or you can send an email with additional information to the Transportation Commission and Metro Transit as well. So does anybody on the commission have a question for the registrant? Okay, thank you very much for coming and sharing your thoughts. And again, you have those additional options if you're looking for additional information, where you can go ask that question directly from Metro Transit, and Mick and Connor will get back to you. Okay? Thank you. Anybody else to speak? Aiden?
Nope, not under this item.
Okay. So if we don't have anybody else registered to speak, I will now close the public hearing. So what questions do we have for staff? Do we have any questions for staff? Harold.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for sharing the document. I guess I may be going to ask the question that one of the public commenters asked in a slightly different way. So if on page 5 of the document that you shared, you have like the table with like the service development, which basically outlines, I think, what the registrant was talking about. So for minor schedule change, you have like for all types of schedule changes, you have a staff report. For some of them, then you do the service development committee review. You have the Title VI equity analysis if it's a major service change, and then we have the public hearing, as we have tonight, if it is a major service change. But I think what I understand from the document that the public hearing, i.e. where people come on a Wednesday at 6 p.m. to the Transportation Commission, is not the only way that you gather feedback on major service changes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So all of our service changes, whether they're a minor service change or a major service change, are put out for public feedback on our website and through bus flyers and various means of gathering that feedback. For major service changes, there's a public participation plan that is part of our Title VI program that outlines kind of the steps of gathering that feedback, including, as you mentioned, a public hearing, as well as incorporating feedback throughout that process. Okay. Yeah, and I think Mick had a couple things there as well.
And how we do that then is like you can call our phone number at 608-266-4466, or you email mymetrobus@cityofmadison.com. Otherwise, we have an online feedback form at mymetrobus.com/feedback. And if you're in the area, we also take feedback at our front desk. We're at 1245 East Washington Avenue, and we're on the second floor. So those are different ways that you can give us that feedback, and we use that for our review of service changes. And then we take that all the time. It doesn't have to be just a time for service change review. So we'll take feedback at any time. I think, Harold, is that what you were looking for?
Yes, and I see Christoph has his hand up too.
Yeah, I do want to note, I think also to assure everybody that those of us who are in decision-making positions here do actually know this system quite well. I've literally ridden every bus route in the city. I regularly depend on the bus to get to work, to go hiking, to go to appointments, to go shopping. I've done all of that on the bus. I have randomly run into Jamie riding the bus when I've been out there. When I've talked to our planners, it is very clear that they have the on-the-ground experience of the system. And I will say I share a lot of those frustrations. I know what it's like when a bus is running late. I know what it's like when I'm trying to plan my life around an hourly route. And so I would reassure everybody that we do actually have a lot of those same concerns. We see it out there, and what we see out there regularly translates into changes. I will say the other thing that service standards always have to negotiate around is the basics of budget. I would love to run every bus route we have every 15 minutes, but we literally do not have the money to do that. And state law prohibits us from raising taxes. State law prohibits us from increasing how much money we spend. A lot of the revenue sources we have essentially not kept up with inflation. So when we run an hourly bus, it's not because we think an hourly bus is good enough. When we run an hourly bus, it's literally that is as far as our budget will go in terms of the service we run. And unfortunately, these service standards often end up being a trade-off of what can we offer, where will our resources do the most good for the most people, and when we make incremental changes, we often have very few resources to play with in making those changes, which is very unfortunate because I would love it if all of those buses ran every 15 minutes, but at the end of the day, we have to work within constraints that are not of our own creation.
15 minutes early in the morning, late into the night to add more to the wish list. Yes. Thank you. I think we can probably all agree on those points. Maybe 10 minutes is better than 15. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the answers. Another question, I think similar to what I asked on the previous agenda items about metrics and performance targets. I really appreciate the document outlining things like on-time performance, stop spacing, guidelines for which type of stops get which types of improvements like pads, benches, shelters, all that kind of stuff. I would really appreciate seeing what is the current on-time performance, which stops should have a higher level of amenities but currently do not, and what do we do about that going forward? So I think this document is really helpful for that. And so maybe somebody can talk about now what? What's the next steps after revising these service standards?
Yeah. Jamie, did you want to shake that one on what kind of the next steps are for looking at those standards and sharing data?
Instead of moving the computer, we're just going to roll around on our chairs. So sorry about all of the moving pieces and parts. So yes, so Metro has a ton of data that we collect, and I would love to share all of it with you. But right now, we are working on trying to look at data-driven decisions around budgeting. And so we are pulling some of the metrics, obviously, that Connor is looking at for this document, but also, our on-time performance and things like that are part of the Results Madison effort that we will be taking on, similar to what I had mentioned that I had in Anchorage around budgeting, where we had the on-time performance. I had ADA, how many of the bus stops in Anchorage were ADA accessible versus what needed to be completed to be brought up to ADA compliance. Everything from how often did a bus shelter get cleaned to vehicle failures between miles. So we have a ton of data. It's how do we get it packaged up and how do we get it presented in a way that you don't have to be a transit planning expert, or you don't have to necessarily comb through and try to read between the lines and really understand the ins and outs of it. So we want to present it in a way that's user-friendly. We want to present it in a way that is meaningful, and that helps inform conversations. So I think one of the things that we really have been looking at is as it relates to what we already are required to report through our National Transit Database with the Federal Transit Administration. We have a ton of metrics, and perhaps we can come back to you with a presentation more in line with service metrics that inform these types of decisions and drivers and whatnot. So I think we also have some reporting requirements coming up as part of the city efforts. I believe we have annual plans that are required to be shared. So be working on those efforts as well. So perhaps a later meeting, we can dive into some more of those performance standards and metrics. The Federal Transit Administration did just recently release a pretty large data effort, and it's a collection of data that we provide to them monthly and annually. Unfortunately, there were some known issues and bugs with data not necessarily translating or being transmitted accurately, but the dashboard has some good information on it. It's information that we report regularly, and that is part of the top 120 agencies that I mentioned earlier that we fall into. And so that is a place already that is being shared. And so we can share that out, but I couch that in it's not matching exactly with what the reporting is right now. And so it's a known issue and they're working through that. But we can start there, or we can start at some other of our metrics, but happy to share our data as best as we can.
appreciate it. I've kind of stopped looking at NTD data since I have become aware of all the issues that you have had,
It is
that FTA has had, and
yes.
No, appreciate that.
We can come back.
Yes, please. And I think for the public, I mean, Metro used to have annual reports. I think maybe they haven't been done in a while, or they have, I don't remember. I don't remember seeing one recently. So I think that would be also a place to like high level summarize some of these metrics and our success with them.
Yes. So our last annual report, as the department had been doing it, was I believe in 24. I think we said we were going to do something different in 25 and 26. Yeah. So I think we are trying to pull together what a version of that annual report that the groups were used to seeing that would have a little bit more performance-driven metrics associated with it, and on top of kind of the narrative of the good work that the department's been doing and how we are maximizing the resources Christoph mentioned. That was definitely one of the things, the cost to continue and to run Metro service and how we leverage those resources for sure needs to be kind of front and center in the conversation as well and around this data.
Yeah. And I will note, we do have the annual report for the Department of Transportation coming up. That will include some transit aspects in there. And something else I think people are asking about is changes. Like these service standards are not making changes in and of themselves. But one of the things we do have coming up is our regional transit plan, which will be a venue for people to think about what long-term changes might look like. And also the North-South BRT project is also going to improve the reliability on some of the routes we've heard about. So there are other efforts going on as well.
Appreciate it, and I look forward to learning more. Oh, sorry.
Harold, let me just add that as a retired banker, I'm always interested in numbers. And the audited financial statement for Metro Transit comes to us annually and will be coming to us, I believe, at the August 12th meeting. Baker Tilly is coming. So we will see numbers that are audited by Baker Tilly that gives us gives me, as someone who used to use that information and rely on it in all my banking decisions and credit decisions, high degree of confidence in that information that's being reported. So that will be coming to us in August, and we see that every year as well. A little bit different than what you were talking about, but really reliable data that we do see on an annual basis. So
for the reminder, appreciate that. Okay, two final things about the specific metrics. I feel like the on-time performance goals, I don't know what the 80% is based on, and it's 80% no more than 5 minutes late. But I think what we've been hearing from riders is like missed connections. Like, if I think with the new system, well, I'm not sure if there are more transfers since we got rid of the transfer points, but if the bus runs every half hour, you miss your connection. If it runs hourly, then 80% is maybe not good enough. So just something to consider. And I know it's hard to achieve, but signal priority bus lanes can probably help with reliability and on-time performance. And then the one thing that I didn't see in here, and I'm not sure what the proper industry term is, like ghost buses. We heard about that for a while, where like the tracker says the bus is coming and then it doesn't come. I think that's one of the very bad type of transit riding experiences that people have. And so thinking about like, what's the right metric for that, and can that be incorporated here? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for staff? Okay, we're going to move into motions and discussion, and Metro Transit is asking the Transportation Commission to approve the proposed service standards and design guidelines. Denise?
Thanks, Ann. Actually, I did have one more question before we move to the motion. Question, maybe comment. One of the things that I hear and I've experienced too are how crowded the buses can be, and sometimes if they're so crowded, then they have to skip stops or only let people exit. So I'm wondering if we can also look at some, in the on-time performance and the reducing of ghost buses should help with that. But I'm wondering if there's also a measurable to look at on overcrowding on the buses and reducing that.
Yes, there is. So we do have a vehicle load standard for both our 40-foot buses and our 60-foot buses that is set at 1.5 times the seated capacity, which is generally about 15 to 20 standees on a 40-foot bus. And so that is data that we can collect and track. And then when we see overloaded buses, we can look at ways to mitigate that, whether that's with extras or increased frequency. As Christoph mentioned, there's always resource constraints. And so we try to allocate those as best we can.
Thanks, Denise. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, we're looking to eventually have a motion to approve the proposed service standards and design guidelines as requested by Metro Transit. So motion, discussion, comments? Do we have a motion to approve? Harold?
I move to approve the service standards.
Okay, there's a motion. Robbie, is that a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Harold?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, discussion. There's a motion to approve the proposed service standards and design guidelines. Is there any discussion? Last call for any discussion. Okay, I'm going to assume unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, thanks very much for the great discussion and good feedback from the public and good feedback from the commissioners. So thanks, Connor and Mick, and appreciate that. So the motion is carried unanimously. So thank you, Denise, earlier for the extremely timely 6 o'clock motion to table item 2 till after the public hearing. So we now need a motion to take item 2 from the table. Denise.
So moved.
All right, there's a motion to take item 2 from the table. Harold?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote. If anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. Okay, we are back to item 2. We were still in the question mode. Does anybody have additional questions? I have a couple, but I'm going to wait till everybody else has an opportunity to ask their questions. Okay, I'm seeing no hands. So one that I have run across that I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on is, what is the current process for making sure that paratransit drivers are appropriately qualified, permitted, and trained? Because we have heard, I have personally heard from drivers who said they've been driving for months and they did not have a permit because they had been denied for a permit and they were appealing that denial. And I was on that subcommittee, and there was a lot of, and has been a lot of feedback about training issues and qualifications in general. So there are stages to what you're talking about, Jamie, and I get that. But, some important concerns. So, what is the current process? Or is that one of those things that's different from provider to provider?
Thanks, Anne. I appreciate it. Mick was like, you know what Anne's going to ask you, right? So, I appreciate this. But I think that This is part of that, what do we need to start leaning into immediately if we haven't already? And I think this is some of what Mike is talking about around the enforcement and the communication and the really digging into the contract and understanding what our responsibility, our authority, what our availability is to enforce and require that each of the service providers are meeting the letter and the intent of the legally binding contract. I know that for myself, I recognize that we, and again, I think that this is a part of that phased approach, but I think this is some of the relationship rebuilding that we have with the service providers that we need to get in. We need to understand their hiring practices. We need to have consistent training requirements and materials, and we need to set the standards on what that looks like. And so I think that is one of the biggest things that we're running into is that having three contractors or three service providers, in 3 different contracts is like a moving target. And so making sure that each one of them is training to the appropriate level, which I don't feel like we define in the contract. And I feel like we have some opportunities in the next RFP process to make sure that those training materials, we see them up front as we're ranking the RFPs and the proposals, and that we are using that as some of the criteria of what it is that we are saying is important at the highest levels of importance in the next service provider. So as it relates to today, I think this is some of the work that Mike is digging into and leaning into and making sure that he's starting to have those regular conversations. We're having the opportunities to actually get in and kind of break down some of the walls, deal with some of the different, I think, whether it's them having expectations of us or us having expectations of them, and just really going back to the contract and what it is that we can enforce within that piece. I think that is the first step here. And then really understanding what are the mechanisms and how do we enforce that. And so I think that's another immediate second step on it almost. So I know that Mike and others have been, digging into those contracts and reading them and trying to understand the provisions and really get a sense of where can we start kind of taking bites out of this to enforce. And I think honestly, what he's doing in repairing and rebuilding the relationships is the first step of that. I don't want to come in heavy-handed, but I also recognize that this is incredibly important and it needs to be addressed. And so I think we can do both. I think we can rebuild relationship and have high expectations and standards. And I think that the contract mechanism is what is going to allow us to do that. But all of us understanding what that means, I think, and being clear on those expectations and what will happen if those expectations are not met. As it relates to non-permitted drivers of paratransit, to me, I'm just like, how does that happen? And perhaps this again is part of that root cause analysis. How? I obviously, Metro obviously does not necessarily provide the permits, but these service providers are representatives of the city. They're representatives of Metro. They're representatives of the work that we do. So I think that this is where also some of the experience and the networks and the availability of reaching out to other peers and professionals that are running successful paratransit systems and asking them, what do you have in your contracts? What is working for you? How are you making sure that your providers, if you're using contracted services, because there are different service models also, right? In Anchorage, I had turnkey. Basically, I had a mobility manager, I had an eligibility assessor, I had a travel trainer, and I had a small team. But then MV Transportation came in and provided the operators. They provided the training. They provided the service standards as a national company providing paratransit. So there's a lot of different models of what this could look like. But I think that there's some things that we could lean on in other properties that are providing paratransit and just make it part of our best practices moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And as part of, I'm going to piggyback on something that Denise said earlier, just as something, as a follow-up to what you were talking about in terms of the various contracts that you have, and as you look forward to the other contracts. So this is probably borderline comment, but it's very relevant to this discussion. And that's also what Harold was talking about, and that's metrics. You know, if you set metrics for a driver who is meeting performance levels, so that that driver can be evaluated independently, then perhaps, Denise, you can avoid some of the issues about having people need to be afraid of reporting issues if there's set standards that can just constantly be evaluated, as opposed to you only look at it if you get a complaint. So just another possibility to try and move away from complaint. So now we're going to look at it to what is the standard as we move forward so that we can make sure everybody's meeting that standard. Just a thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would actually, if you're okay, I think that this is incredibly important, that this is information that we should be collecting, and we do report a lot of information to the federal government as part of the requirements. But I think you're absolutely right. Having the metrics established early, especially for the next RFP, the next contract out of the RFP, they need to know that we are tracking these things. We are reporting them out. We are sharing the information. We are making decisions based on the metrics and the quality that we're seeing. And I think that also part of this is really important in the sense of how when you are submitting your invoices to us monthly to reimburse for payments, we should be having conversations about these every single month. We should be regularly checking in, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I want us to be having the conversations around, okay, we're having our submission. Let's check in. Let's see how things are going. How are they tracking? And not just be reacting to the negativity. Let's talk about what's going well. How do we replicate that? How do we make sure that continues? And look at those opportunities for training, look at the opportunities for ongoing development with the drivers, with their staff, and continue to meet those service standards that, we have set, but also, that Mike is right now really working to establish with these providers. So we have kind of twofold, right? We don't know, my crystal ball isn't super clear as to what it's going to look like come, July 1st of 2027 of, will I have 3 providers? Will I have 1 provider? Will I have 2? I really hope I don't have any more than 3. But I really do think that we have the existing, what we've got to work with through June 30, 2027. And then what does the next iteration of this look like? And so we need to inform both of those, and we need to make sure that both of those are operating well. I don't want to just say, oh, this is going to be over June 30th. Like, don't bother. We're just going to look forward. We still have today. We still have what happened today. We still have what happens tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, until we reach a place where we have a new contract in place.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's just a really important issue because the ordinances are pretty clear that these drivers are supposed to be permitted. So
yes,
yeah. And one other quick question: does your ride scheduling software have the ability for the rider to specify if they need a specialized vehicle or they do not need a specialized vehicle? Because there has been a lot of discussion about that and about how, you don't always need to have a vehicle with a lift, and sometimes it's better if it's not a vehicle with a lift. Yeah. So does your this new scheduling software allow you to do that? And if not, then again, that might be for the future. So
I'm gonna turn the camera to Mike and Amy because they don't let me play in the software. So these are the experts.
Okay.
The short answer is yes, and we do have the capability in the software to match travel needs So it would be mobility and travel needs of the client with the appropriate vehicle.
Okay, great. Thank you. So any other questions of staff? Okay, now let's move to discussion. I know a lot of people had some thoughts that they wanted to save for this part of the process. What items do we have, or what comments do you have with regard to discussion? Thoughts about the plans, thoughts about where we're headed? Denise.
And thanks for those were excellent questions. I really appreciated those. A few things. First of all, the intent to have the paratransit have equitable status to transit as a whole is commendable. I want to call that out. As people with disabilities, we are often we're often thought of later, like, oops, we forgot. And then there's a lot of retrofitting and scrambling or continued ignoring or patchwork. So this, I think, as we've talked tonight and we've talked offline in meetings, is a pivotal change for Metro to be looking at paratransit as equal footing. And so part of that for me is, and I really appreciated the couple of comments from my TC peers who are not paratransit riders, that you don't ride, you don't know. And so how I want to have us continue to look at how do we lift the veil on paratransit experience. So when there's reporting that's coming to TC, how is paratransit brought into that reporting? How is the Disability Rights Commission help to be part of the solution? So, I have ideas for that. I won't take up meeting time now, but I think you all do as well. But I think if we are saying paratransit is equally important to the rest of transit, then we need to continually be asking ourselves the question of, are we giving it the same stage? I do have a lot of questions about the training, and I think having it built into the contracting about what the standard of performance is and the standard of training. I cannot tell you how many nights at the end of the day I have been out in my parking lot correcting behavior of paratransit drivers. Like, no, we don't grab people's bodies and drag them into a vehicle. No, we don't walk away and leave them standing there overwhelmed. So I'd like to not be doing the paratransit training. So I think, and the reality is we may end up with more than one company, there's not a lot of people doing specialized transit. So that really having uniform standards and expectations for training and performance, that feels just incredibly critical to me. And I really appreciate, Jamie, that you're going to make an effort to involve people with lived experience, because we're able to describe what it feels like when someone grabs our cane and takes our agency away, and how we don't ever want hands on that cane, and things like that. So we're headed in a good direction, and I know you see this as the start, not the end conversation, which I really appreciate. So yeah, just how do we continually educate our TC peers about paratransit Transit so that you all are really prepared to ask powerful questions. And how does paratransit seen as an equal partner to fixed route and BRT? And then the last thing I'll say, two things, is I was like doing, I did a whoop in my office when I saw the slides and saw mobility management added. It is such a powerful tool, and not that the mobility manager fixes everything, but to have a designated point person is who can make those connections internally, externally with the community, with the providers. I've seen mobility management used really powerfully in this state, and we are leaders in mobility management in Wisconsin. So I'm excited for that position to be added to Metro. And then just on the beacons, I am thrilled by those at solving a problem that we have talked about since BRT went into effect. Is that some of us can't mind the gap very successfully. So shouting at the door to have the driver put the ramp out it was not working. So this movement to the beacons, I just really want to applaud that. So yeah, I think there's a whole bunch of thoughts there. I know I have more, but I don't want to take up more time now. But just we're moving in a good direction. I think that attitudinal shift. Oh, I know what the last one was. Metro went through such significant change in the last 5 years, and some really awesome things have been put into place. And now I think the work is really about remembering that human beings use the system. I think we got really good at building various systems overall, and now it's like, okay, how do we increase the quality of the human experience of the people using any part of the system? So those are my thoughts, and again, really excited and happy to partner with Metro as we work through these issues and potential possibilities.
Thank you, Denise, and thank you for spending that extra time working with the folks at Metro. I'm aware of the separate meetings that you've had and the ongoing commitment that you've made to help them, and that's really, really much appreciated. Does anybody else have any other comments or discussion items? I do have a comment with regard to the rider survey and the methods that you're planning to gather feedback in this short-term period. You talked about using focus groups in a longer-term setting, working groups. But I wonder, and Denise and others can talk with you offline about how this might work or what might be the best way to go about it. But we hear from people all the time that coming to a transportation commission meeting or a common council meeting is intimidating, and sometimes people choose not to do that just because it is, and people may not want to answer online or respond in the ways that you've already outlined that you'll be contacting them. So I wonder about the friendlier possibility of gathering people together, like Denise gathering some people together and say, hey, Jamie, can some of your folks come and talk to this group? And Denise is giving us a thumbs up. That kind of community engagement you use in other situations. And I'm wondering if that wouldn't be a friendlier way and a less intimidating way to maybe get at some of that feedback that you're looking to get.
Yeah, it's that's one of the things that I think part of what helped me kind of fall in love with transit was when I was doing mobility management work in Anchorage early on in my career, and the engagement pieces. I actually, when I was out of the screen, I was checking an email real quick. The National Transit Institute just reached out and actually wants to hold for the local area the course that they do on public engagement around transportation, and they're trying to figure out when a good time would be to bring that course in person in Madison. And so perhaps that's a really great refresher for all of us, and whether it's here at Metro or people that are interested in coming in and participating in the training as well, that we could hold here to kind of do a refresher on those techniques and the different opportunities around that, and kick off some of the less formal, the less, we get on the Zoom call or we have just a public meeting and you have to go talk into the mic. Maybe it is just like a coffee with Metro where we show up at Collectivo like Denise and I did and Mick, and we talk paratransit, and I think that there's some opportunities here. But I think we're on the same page for sure, Anne, where it's like, how do we get the engagement in a way that isn't necessarily, obviously provide the traditional methods, provide those, but what else can we do? We recognize that this is also relationship building with the paratransit community. We know that we need to give an extra touch to the riders here. They have had some situations that are really unfortunate, and I think that we have the opportunity here to regain some trust and to show how it is that we plan to move forward. And I think we do that in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all the information that you've brought forward and the plans that you and everybody else at Metro Transit has put together. And as you can tell, a lot of people have questions and are interested. I don't use paratransit myself either, but my brother, who recently passed away, was in a wheelchair, and he did use paratransit over in the Waukesha area, and he had a lot of interesting feedback for me as well. And Denise, a lot of his experiences mirrored some of the things that you said people have been telling you as well. Some of the stories that we've heard tonight. So I don't think this is just limited to Madison. I think people have these similar experiences other places as well. So I do very much appreciate this information and appreciate the update. And I think, we have it in our work plan that we get updates on accessibility at least twice a year. But, I think there are some steps here that you're looking to go through, and whenever it's appropriate for you to come back and we'll explore, you can touch base with Rebecca and we can explore how best to work with the Disability Rights Commission, whether it's jointly or two different experiences. One might be better than the other. I'm not certain. So other comments or questions? Denise, your hand is up. Did you want me to lower it? Okay. All right. Mick, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a question real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's right. It says Mick Rushin. It's you, Jamie. Okay.
No problem. Yeah. He's over here to the side.
See, when it comes up in the queue, the name of the person just shows up for me. So.
No problem. I was wondering, as we are internally, as we're talking about different planning things and trying to make sure that paratransit is represented at the table when we're talking internally, I think one of the things that I would like to do in just kind of setting the expectation or tone moving forward is that if we're going to bring you an update on fixed route, we are also bringing you an update on paratransit, and that it's not just twice a year that we come to you. That if even, like I said, good, bad, and different. If we're going to bring something to you about the fixed route and we're providing an update, even, Connor service standards tonight, maybe the sidebar is this has no impact to paratransit, and we've thought about it. I think that even just making that sort of correlation might just be a little helpful and a little more inclusive to what it is that we're trying to do.
Sure. No, and that's great. And had conversations with Mick, and he's done this several times, where there's information that you have available that you think is important to share with the Transportation Commission. And so he has put together an email and sent out one of those, do not respond to all type disclosures.
What am I
at the
going to do
top.
when he leaves?
Yeah. So, he's working with Connor and other people, so he'll be greatly missed. But I don't know if you all know Mick's retiring in October. So yeah, he is.
Did you
So
see the faces and the reactions?
yeah, being retired is really awesome. Let me tell you. But you will be greatly missed, Mick. But he's figured out ways to communicate with the Transportation Commission. So some of that data, Harold, that you're looking for. So Jamie, you have it and you want to send out a report card on fixed route and paratransit. You can ship it out and send an email explaining what you have. And if commissioners have points and they want it on an agenda, we can do that so that we can save time here for important discussions like tonight, where we're talking about policies here. We're talking about how paratransit is going to be designed going forward in our city, which is an incredibly important topic. But if you have data to share, you don't have to wait and have a big presentation. You can ship it out to people and people can get back to you individually if they have questions. So just a thought.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Other comments for Jamie and everybody else? Again, a very important topic. Any last comments? Jamie, Connor, Mick, Mike? Oh, who else was over there?
We got me and AJ too. I had a full room. So
okay, I don't think we all got everybody who was in the room, but thanks to you all for coming and sharing thoughts. Any last comments? And again, if you have anything thanks to everybody for the work. Very, very positive and it's great to recognize issues and address concerns and figure out where we're going to move forward. So
thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much. Okay. We're going to move on to item 4, Perry Street Connection Study. We have Liz, Jose, and Christoph. Who's going to start us off?
Liz will be starting us off.
Okay.
Yeah, are you able to see my screen as well?
There it is. It's taking a second to load. Do you want to put it in full screen? There we go. All right. So myself, Jose Navarro, and then Christoph are going to provide an overview of the Perry Street study tonight. Go ahead, Jose. So the Perry Street study was funded by a federal Reconnecting Communities grant, which was designed to understand and explore different options for bridging connections that were generally lost through the development of generally freeways. And so this location has been studied in the past, as some folks on this call are aware of. But the goal for this study was really to understand what the feasibility was, what the costs and benefits would be, and what different options may or may not work. I also want to note that there is currently no funding to build a connection, and we don't have any immediate plans to move forward with a construction project. And the purpose of the presentation tonight is really just informational. We're not looking for the commission to approve anything, but we are looking for feedback and to answer any questions you all may have. As I mentioned, the purpose and need are here on the slide. The study area, the needs that were identified through the study were the north-south connectivity gap that is currently in place where the Beltline exists. The connection was identified in the South Madison Neighborhood Plan and in Connect Greater Madison, and safety is an ongoing concern in this area for bicyclists. And now I will pass it over to Jose, who will talk about the different alternatives that were looked at.
Yeah, thank you, Liz, for the introduction. And pretty much to kick it off here, I'll just kind of give some some background on the study area itself. So what you see here is just a figure The map extents is pretty much the study area itself. And then the orange highlighted area is kind of like the location where we look to see if a connection was feasible. And so kind of to get you situated with what we're kind of looking at, this is the southern part of Madison, and kind of at the intersection of West Badger Road, that is South Park Street. We're near the South Madison campus. You can kind of see there's Fish Hatchery Road making its way up. And then you can see kind of the belt line acting as this natural barrier kind of sweeping through the area from east to west. And so with that belt line there, it separates the two, kind of pinpointing like a north and southern portion. And so in our study, we found that, 67% of the housing or the households are located in the northern portion. So that's about 1,900 households. And then on the southern portion, it's an industrial area. So there's about 3,700 jobs in the southern portion, which is about 73% in the whole study area. And I'll also note that there are bus routes here. They are just kind of highlighted red. They kind of point out, but you can kind of see that in an orange location, there is no red. So there is no bus service kind of in that southern portion area along Seward Street, Perry Streets, Jonathan Drive, a lot of that industrial area. However, if a connection were to be made here, we could provide about 100 people in terms of ridership. That route could go down Perry Street and give access to about 1,500 jobs. And, it would pretty much make the system a little bit more efficient instead of the B and the H that currently overlap on that red line. We can get the H to kind of split off. It just makes it a little bit more efficient and capture a bit of more stuff. And then kind of the portion for the bike kind of connection, we do have the Capital City Trail down Cyan Road. If you keep going more south, there are Capital City Trails there. And so, if we were to provide some kind of connection there near Cyan Road, users could go up Cyan Road through this connection and then to the future North-South BRT bike path that would be located on the west side of South Park Streets. And you can see here that currently for users, they would have to go through Fish Hatchery Road to West Badger Road. And then if they wanted to, they can go on South Park Street or continue on Fish Hatchery Road to the Cannonball path. But the connection itself, to do that currently, you would have to do about 17 minutes of biking to kind of go all the way around. If this connection were to be made, that would cut it down to about 8 minutes. So it's about it's a significant amount of time cut. And besides the time, there's also the safety factor, right? So you can kind of see here in this exhibits, there are kind of these heat map kind of portion of the exhibits. So at the intersection of Fish Hatchery Road and Greenway Crossing, you can kind of see there's a kind of a bubble there, and that kind of represents the crash density areas. So there's quite a few of those. There's another big one at West Badger Road and South Park Streets. And so besides kind of the time factor, a connection would benefit bicyclists with that safety factor. It would give them another path to kind of go around and, not be in those intersections in the first place. If they wanted to choose that route to go, north or south. And then the other thing would be emergency vehicles. So as I said before, they currently have to go all the way around, West Badger Road, down Fish Hatchery Road, down Greenway Crossing to Stewart Streets, if they wanted to access that area, if an emergency were to occur. And so with that direct connection, it would cut down the time from, I believe, if we were going to go from the West Badger Road kind of fire station where it used to be to the touchdown of that orange circle, we go from 6 minutes to 3 minutes. So it's another 50% time reduction. It's pretty significant. And so that was kind of our initial background when we had started the study. And then we kind of moved on to some high level concepts on how to do that kind of connection. And so what you see here is kind of 4 different high-level alternatives that we had developed. So the straight bridge, kind of in the upper left corner here, that would be multimodal. It would, provide access to vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists via an overpass bridge. And then the straight tunnel is just pretty much that, but underground. And then we also had the ped bike bridge, which is just strictly ped and bicyclists to go over the Beltline. And then we also had the angled bridge version of a multimodal bridge where it would connect from Perry Streets to Cyan Road. And then from these 4 high-level alternatives, we had evaluation factors to kind of decide which ones we kind of want to move on with. We looked at how do these alternatives connect to Ann Street and Applegate? Do we need to cul-de-sac them? How does it provide connectivity across the Beltline? Does it actually give, bicyclists and pedestrians accommodations that are kind of worth it? Does it give emergency vehicles, the services, like the kind of connection they need to do to kind of get that time reduction? And then is it compatible with existing plans? And then what were the property impacts and kind of the feasibility overall? And so from those 4 alternatives, we moved to just kind of carry forward the ped bike bridge and the angled bridge. The straight bridge that was multimodal, it just had 2 grade of impacts, and the tunnel was pretty much the same thing, except the tunnel would be more of a drastic impact. And then the ped bike bridge was kind of a relatively, it was the lowest impact of them all, and also kind of like filled in the purpose and need that we were looking forward to as part of the study. And then the angled bridge also was kind of the in between impacts of like the vehicle access portion of it. And so then as we went forward with those 2 high-level alternatives, we then moved on to a kind of detailed plan sets. What does it look like? Like we'll take a deeper dive into what does it really mean if we do get these through. And so for the ped bike bridge, this is what the concepts turned out to be. The right side, you can see that there's Madison College, and that's going to be the northern portion. You can see that Perry Street is on the right side as well, with West Badger Road at the intersection. And then on the southern portion, you can kind of see there's Cyan Road and Perry Streets. And so what this ped bike bridge would do, it would impact 2 properties. They would be the 2 motels that are currently there. And pretty much we would kind of expect users to kind of go down Cyan Road. As I said before, there's the Capital City Trail as you keep going down. So maybe in future improvements, this would be the route to take. And then for the northern portion, users could then get off of Perry Streets onto West Badger Road, and then there's that north-south BRT bike connection in the future that they could take. And then for the multimodal portion, it's a little bit more complicated. So as we were designing it, we wanted to keep access and not truly remove it all. Because our initial concepts, we had driveways to be removed. And so we introduced this kind of frontage road portion. So the northeast corner is going to be the north side with Madison College at the tail end. And then the west corner would just be the Cyan Road connection. And so that frontage road that I'm talking about here, you can kind of see that the multimodal bridge kind of branches off to allow access for one-way direction. So it would still provide, trucks that come through to the kind of the industrial area of that neighborhood. And the impacts on the north side would just be, well, not just, but it would be leisure companies would have a opportunity to have their driveway kind of reinstated in a different way. That is why it's currently hatched. So there's an opportunity to kind of provide them a driveway. If not, then the property would be negatively impacted and probably was acquired. The motel itself is still hatch blue, so we would still need to heavily impact that area and do some kind of acquisition. And then the southern portion, there is the PAC properties here that is also hatched. So there's also an opportunity where we could provide them a driveway because their existing driveway is currently impacted. And then we would also have that frontage road one-way access to still kind of provide access to Scion Road for any kind of vehicles that run through. And then also to note that since this is a multimodal bridge, there would be pedestrian and bicyclist access over the bridge. That would be the kind of gray southern portion. And then it would run along all the way down Scion Road. And then we would kind of cut off the path at that intersection for future, for future path connectivity. And so looking at these two alternatives, we also did some more, analysis factors, and it's not a perfect answer. It's pretty much, there's pros and cons to how it would be. And so, we had done a second PIM, and the results were mixed about the multimodal bridge. They were worried about traffic concerns. We are running a traffic model with the Greater Madison MPO that should be done relatively soon. And then the PED bridge was still, it was still positively looked at during that PIM. And then I'll leave it to Liz.
All right. So as Jose alluded to, the study did not identify a single alternative that addressed all the needs without those notable trade-offs that he talked about. As mentioned, the bike and ped bridge did have the lowest impacts, but had mixed public support and would not provide for that transit access that was identified in the beginning of the study as a significant need. At the same time, the angled bridge also comes with higher costs and greater impacts to the surrounding area. So right now, none of those alternatives were deemed to be feasible to move forward at this time. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Christoph is going to talk a little bit about a conceptual option for potential future study.
So I'll say this study is part of why I believe in doing studies, because it is obvious that there is a lack of connectivity here. It is not obvious how to fix that. And what we came up with here was one alternative which would fix that connectivity for peds and bikes. It would still have significant acquisition impacts, but it would fix that, but it would not help cars or transit at all. We came up with another possibility which would provide access for bikes and cars and transit and emergency vehicles. But in doing that would actually eliminate some current connectivity that we have simply because there's no room to land. And we also heard concerns about putting all of that traffic on Perry Street past the college on a roadway that really was never designed for that. And that got us thinking here that there is a fundamental problem we are trying to solve, and that maybe none of these solutions really gets to the basic problem. And I would argue that the basic problem we have in this area is the Beltline acts as a massive barrier. That's obvious. And it disconnects our arterial network. What we really need to have in order to have a well-connected city is a network of surface streets that connect with each other. Instead, here we have one neighborhood on the south end of this project that is essentially bounded by highways on two sides and disconnected from that overall network. And then on the other side, we have another such neighborhood that is equally disconnected. And part of what that does is it makes it harder to get to these neighborhoods. The other thing it does is it forces a lot of trips onto the Beltline, which means that the Beltline is getting more congested. We're putting trips on the freeway that probably don't really belong on the freeway. And we're making people go a really long way around. And one way to think about this is if you take Park Street headed south, as you approach the Beltline, suddenly Park Street turns from a city street that is a connected part of the Madison network and abruptly turns into a freeway that will take you far south on 14 and like suddenly turns into an inner city connection. And those two have very little to do with each other. The traffic that is headed south towards Oregon, Brooklyn, like that traffic is not the same kind of traffic that's trying to travel within the city on Park Street. And so one way of thinking about this is that it is the disconnection of the arterial network and it is the Beltline itself that is actually causing this problem. And so maybe to think about solving this problem, we need to think about doing the Beltline differently. And obviously, WSDOT did a Pell study in this area, but that Pell study didn't really do a fundamental rethink of what the arterial network and the freeway interchange could look like here. So what we asked the consultants to do was just some brainstorming on what else might be possible here. So we're showing you one approach. The report actually shows a couple of others. But what we do think is conceptually, it's interesting to think about what could we do here if we didn't take some of the existing infrastructure and the existing barriers for granted. I will also say this is not necessarily in place of. We could do a ped bike bridge and still think about doing something like this in the future. This is not recommended. This is not funded. We are not far enough in that thinking, but it might be a beginning of a discussion with WSDOT as WSDOT does more work on the Beltline in the future. So next slide. So here's one such idea. What we are seeing here is Park Street actually continuing south into Cheyenne so that we have a continuous north-south connection. We are also showing an east-west connection to Novation Parkway. So now we have taken this entire area and linked it in both the north-south direction and the east-west direction. At the same time, we've replaced the current highway interchange with a roundabout, and this could take different configurations. This could be a smaller roundabout. This could be a series of traffic signals. The idea here is that this isn't a freeway. It is a surface street. And taken the strongest traffic flow off of 18, which is onto the Beltline headed east, and actually taken that out of that interchange and just given a direct connector underneath. And then meanwhile, you also want to create those ped bike connections. I've seen in the comments, I think we left some confusion as to what that connection could be. We're not implying that that connection needs to be an at-grade connection across those ramps. That could take many forms. That could be a bridge. That could be an underpass. Depending on the configuration of a roundabout, it could be integrated into the roundabout. Definitely would not want to do something like this without a safe all ages and abilities bike connection. But ultimately, we think something like this might solve a lot of the connectivity problems we are talking about a lot better than a Perry multimodal bridge or than a ped bike bridge by itself. It would allow us transit service. It would pull trips off of the Beltline. It would make emergency response better. It would make a lot of neighborhoods better connected. So one of our takeaways here is that we think it is worth considering these kind of options in the long term and be open to some really transformative moves which could shape what this entire area looks like. And that part of that is that thinking about the surface street network as being different than our highway network. Next slide. Back to Liz.
All right. So as we described, the study kind of did what we wanted it to do, right? We looked at all these different alternatives. We understood what the outcomes could be and what the costs and benefits of those would be. We have those documented really well. So I think overall, staff thinks this was a really valuable study, very, useful exercise. And I think knowing that this will provide and inform future transportation planning discussions, both in coordination with WSDOT around the Beltline, and also just thinking about local road connections on the south side of Madison. So right now we are looking at wrapping up the study, being able to have that final report that we can utilize in the future, but not recommending to advance one of the build alternatives.
Yeah, and so to be clear, this is intended as a briefing. We would love your feedback on this, but we're not going into this looking for any kind of motion or any kind of decision because we don't think that a project is imminent here.
Thank you all very much for the information. Aiden, do we have anybody registered to speak on this item?
We do. We have one registrant.
Okay, so we'll hear from the public and then we'll go to questions and discussion.
So we have Nicholas Davies of Richard Street, neither supports nor opposes and wishes to speak.
Thank you. I noted that the staff presentation characterized the Cap City Trail and Jenny and Kyle Preserve as unreachable by car today, but I've personally reached these destinations by car easily, both from the west side and from the east side. That access by car is in no way impaired today. It is exclusively prioritized. If anything, Cyan Road should be closed to through traffic at Post Road, especially if the north end of Cyan is going to be connected across the Beltline. When Cyan was closed to through traffic last summer, I rode through there on bike, and it was a beautiful ride. It was so quiet. And then the road reopened with a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, and there was nowhere on that road for cyclists to cycle safely. That temporary connection effectively went away. Closing Cyan Road below Post Road would be a very simple and cost-effective way to add pedestrian and cyclist connectivity to this area. And if you want to get to McCoy and Cyan by car, you could just hop on Highway 14 like you already can today. The bike ped bridge option looks great, and the presentation did not make a convincing case for rejecting it. It's striking to me that the city surveyed the public multiple times on this, and the public sentiment was to prioritize pedestrians and cyclist safety. And now they want to throw that out and reframe the problem and move the goalposts on us. For bikes and peds to get across the Beltline and its on-off ramps safely will require adding on, you guessed it, a bike ped bridge. So this concept takes a project that was supposed to be about bike and pedestrian safety and connectivity and puts those considerations back at square one. And this is not the first time that's happened. With Regent Street, the public clearly put safety in top priority and auto-oriented uses dead last, and then staff drew up a preferred alternative that did the exact opposite. This prioritization of safety is not an anomaly either. I see a connection between this and the movement that sprung up in the wake of Sasha Rosen's death on Park Street, less than a kilometer away from Perry Street. I see a connection between this and the protests of Corey Ruiz's killing, where Madison residents are saying loud and clear that we don't want our public institutions killing anyone for any reason, even if that challenges the status quo. It seems like Vision Zero is being relegated to its own budget item and its own agenda item, while other parts of traffic engineering still aren't incorporating it into what they're doing. If the city is going to stop killing people, that needs to change. Thank you.
Thanks for coming and sharing your thoughts. Does anybody have any questions for the registrant? Okay, thanks for coming. Questions for staff? Anybody have any questions for staff? Harold?
I guess, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation and the creative thinking. I'm wondering, with the bike ped alternative, since it would require property acquisition, I guess there's a decent chance, since I don't know, does we can't use eminent domain to acquire property for ped bike projects. Does this apply here? So if somebody were not willingly selling, we just couldn't do anything?
So I don't know, Jose, if you guys talked about that with the project team, but I don't necessarily think that that assumption is being made here. I think we're talking more about just the general impacts and wanting to note the impacts to the property. I don't think we're saying we, could not use eminent domain here.
Yeah, and to add to that, we're kind of in the study was kind of conducted in a way that was pre-NEPA, so we couldn't really dive super deep into any kind of acquisition of that. And I have tried to contact the owners of this motel, and they never responded or emailed me.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there might also be the same problem if you go for the other alternative because it includes a wider sidewalk. So you might have the same problem, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this may run into limitations there that the other one doesn't, because on the other case, the properties are necessary in order to establish the roadway connection. I'll note another factor here that also applies is that some of these same properties are properties which could be affected in any future Beltline projects, which also might make it easier to piggyback something like this on a larger project rather than do it as a standalone initially.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Harold. Robbie, go ahead.
Thanks. I actually am going to have a couple comments, but for the moment, I just have a question, and that is, you did emphasize that there's no funding for this at this time. I guess the question I had was, where would this rank as far as what we would be requesting funding for? Let's just say federal funding. As an example, if it was just a bike ped facility in the TAP list, or if it was, and I will tell you that I have a history with this connection, which if you are interested, I can give you the long and sordid history of how we didn't build this when we had a chance and we had funding. But the funding was highway safety funding, because people kept cutting holes in the fences and running across the Beltline to get to jobs. So we got federal funding under the highway safety funding program. And I'm just sort of wondering, if it was either TAP or some other pool, where would this rank as far as our priorities? That's kind of my question.
We have not explicitly prioritized this project. I will say, I think one of the things that has changed here is federal funding for this seems less likely, given changed federal priorities. In terms of local funding, we have a couple of projects that are associated with other projects. For example, when WSDOT is rebuilding a highway, we have a chance to build a bridge connection at that point because it can be bundled in the larger project. So those kind of projects where we have one chance to do it now will tend to be prioritized, just for obvious reasons, because we missed that chance otherwise. The other thing I think in terms of prioritization of this project that makes it tough is a lot of the connections we consider do not require acquisition of property, and this requires a fairly large acquisition, which necessarily increases the budget quite a bit. And as noted before, to really make this project a useful regional connection, there is probably a need for building additional facilities associated with it. So in terms of sort of cost benefit of this project, I think those things would work against it in terms of ranking it compared to other projects. And there are a number of other connections across the Beltline that WSDOT identified in the Pell study that are very promising, so we'd have to weigh it against those as well.
Thank you. I do think that in the Pell study, I think this particular connection, I think, ranked pretty high in public comments and in WSDOT even considering where it what they thought was necessary. But again, that assumes that we're rebuilding the Beltline, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But I think that it was ranked fairly high. And I completely understand other connections in the city being more important. I just kind of wanted to throw that out there and ask your opinion.
Right. No, and I will say, we have clearly heard public interest and demand for this connection. I don't think the question here is this a useful connection or not? I think it is very definitely a useful connection. The question is, given the cost and the impacts of this connection, how high do we prioritize that? And the question is, how much is a roadway connection, which was recommended in the plan down here. That was in the South Madison plan as a roadway connection in addition to ped bike, and that was part of the problem statement for this project all along. How valuable is a roadway connection compared to only a ped bike connection?
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Robbie. Other questions for staff? Staff is not asking for any motion, although commissioners can always make a motion if they choose to. Let's move to discussion now. Comments, discussion. Robbie, go ahead.
So now that we're on discussion, I feel that I have to give some folks that may not have been around the history of this connection. Because it's one of my bitter memories that I cannot let go of. Back in the early 2000s, there was money for a bike ped overpass. And it was a highway safety project, which meant that it was, instead of 80%, it was a 90% funded. And it was, again, as I mentioned, it was funded because people kept trying to get across to the jobs by cutting holes in the fences at the Beltline and running across the Beltline, and that was indeed a safety issue. So we had money for this. Well, first of all, they held a public hearing in the middle of the winter, and the only people that showed up to support it, one bicyclist showed up to support it because it was really horrible weather. And a bunch of people showed up who ran businesses and said, we don't want a connection across the Beltline because those people, and you can imagine who they might have been talking about, are going to run across the Beltline after they rob us, and the police won't be able to come and get them. So we don't want this connection. And the alder for the area decided to hijack the money and use it for ped bike facilities along Todd Drive that was being rebuilt at the time. Well, they screwed that up too. If you look at the quote, bike lane that goes under Todd Drive, it is to the right of the right turn lane to go on the on-ramp. So that's not good either. So it really was pretty useless, but basically the money got hijacked for something that should have been paid for as part of a regular roadway project. And I am still bitter about it. I was on the MPO, and it came to the MPO, and I fought against it, and I lost. So I have been waiting over 20 years for this connection. And I know it's not, I know there's things that we have to balance, and I understand that, and I understand there's not funding right now, but I just wanted everybody to know that we had money for this. The money was hijacked, it was used improperly, and we still don't have a decent ped bike connection on Todd Drive where the ped bike money was sent. So I had to get that off my chest. Everybody in Fitchburg wanted this because it's a great connection for Fitchburg.
At the time, Cyene Road was not particularly scary. It was a pretty low traffic street. So it was pretty easy to bike up and down Cyene. And everybody in Fitchburg wanted it. A lot of people who bike to Fitchburg wanted it. Employees at businesses in Fitchburg wanted it. People who live in Fitchburg who work in the city wanted it. And we lost our opportunity because a bunch of business owners came out to the meeting and told the alder that they didn't want a connection because they were afraid people were going to run across the belt line and not be able to be picked up by the police. Now, of course, the idea that the police couldn't just meet them on the other side of the bridge never came up somehow. But just, as I said, I just felt like I had to get that history in there and get that off my chest. And if anybody wants to know more about it, I'll be glad to tell you.
Did you have comments, Robbie, on the current proposal?
No, but I will say that I very much appreciate staff considering alternatives. And even though it's not particularly fleshed out, the idea that you are considering a roundabout to link up options on Park Street, I think that would be beneficial even for drivers. I don't know what it's going to look like in the long run. I don't know if it's going to be great in the long run or if it's unfeasible or whatever, but I do very much appreciate staff looking at it and looking creatively, and that makes me very happy that we are considering options besides the usual options that just, you put in an interchange here and you put in a bridge there and that kind of thing. So, thinking about different options is very good. So.
Thanks, Robbie. Other comments or questions for staff? Or other comments or discussion? Okay, thanks very much for bringing this to us.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have crossover reports from other BCCs. Anybody have anything this evening? I'm seeing no hands. Okay. I don't have any announcements tonight. Future agenda topics. As I mentioned, the Metro Transit Annual Financial Statement Audit Report. Jody Dobson will be here from Baker Tilly on August 12th. That's the plan anyway. Possibility of public hearing to remove RP3 parking from Mill Street, a possibility that may be delayed, but it may also move forward. We're looking at approval of the Milwaukee Street project that has come to us before, but will be coming back to, it was here before for review and feedback. It's coming to us for approval. The annual Department of Transportation report that Christoph mentioned earlier, and review and approval of the TC handbook and special rules and the TC annual work plan. Drafts are out to staff for comments on those, and we're hoping to get those in for approval, and possibly some towing charge and parking garage rates and fees, but those may be pushed off as well. Does anybody have any future topics that we aren't tracking that you would want us to add to the future, to a future agenda? Nope, seeing no hands, then we need a motion to adjourn. Harold.
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion, and Robbie?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to assume unanimous consent vote, and can't imagine anybody would be objecting to that. Thanks again for a great discussion this evening. Really appreciate everybody's feedback and input, and we'll see you next time.